All right, let's dive into some real history today. Eyewitness accounts of the JFK assassination. We're going back to Dallas, November 22nd, 1963. The motorcade, the crowds, and then, those shots that rang out in Dealey Plaza.
Right.
Our sources for this deep dive are coming from the Dealey Plaza Echo. It's a research journal focused on uncovering the truth about that day.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating about these accounts is they bring us the human side of this huge historical event. Like, we're not just talking about dry facts here.
Right.
We're hearing directly from people who were actually there in Dealey Plaza.
Exactly. And we're going to be focusing on two people in particular, Paul Wilkins, who was a Dallas police officer on duty that day,
Right.
and Mary Mormon, a bystander who took a Polaroid picture that became really pretty famous.
Yeah.
It's like we get to step back in time and hear their stories firsthand.
It really does. You really get a sense of the chaos and confusion after the shooting. Yeah. Like how everyone was just trying to figure out what had just happened.
Right. All right, so let's start with Officer Wilkins. He was a veteran of the Dallas police force, just going about his usual shift on what seemed like a surprisingly quiet and rainy morning. But even before that day, Wilkins had a lot going on in his personal life. A divorce, his mother had passed away, he even had a transfer to a new station.
And yet, amidst all of that, there was a sense of optimism. He'd recently gotten engaged.
Oh, wow.
He was about to get a promotion. It felt like things were looking up for him.
Oh, so it's like a roller coaster ride of emotion.
Absolutely.
So Wilkins is going through his routine, totally unaware of the tragedy about to unfold. Then it hits that infamous Signal 19 call on the police radio. Shots fired in Dealey Plaza.
You can imagine the adrenaline.
Yeah.
He grabs his shotgun, races to the scene, arrives at the Texas School Book Depository where they believe the shots came from.
Yeah.
And he doesn't hesitate. He starts systematically searching the 6th floor and describes finding a rifle, a Carcano, hidden behind some book cartons. But here's the thing. Wilkins knew his rifles. Just weeks before, he had been helping his father modify similar rifles,
Wow, so he knew exactly what he was looking at.
And this is where it gets interesting. He recognized the rifle type instantly, but no one in the initial investigation even asked him about it.
Wait, so he recognized it immediately and they didn't ask him about it? That seems a little, I don't know.
Right.
Suspicious.
Very suspicious.
Like, wouldn't you want to talk to the officer who could actually identify the weapon?
You would think so, yeah. It raises questions about how thoroughly that early investigation was actually conducted.
Totally. And then, to make things even more confusing, Wilkins, along with Sergeant Flush, who also recognized the Carcano, they both get sent to search the building's attic based on a tip they got.
Oh, wow.
So they leave the 6th floor, which is like the potential crime scene, and that's when the news starts coming in from this transistor radio they had with them.
Yeah.
Kennedy is dead. Officer Tippit has been killed. There's even a report of a submarine off the coast of Galveston.
Can you imagine? I mean, the tension in those moments.
It's like the world's imploding around them, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
And you have to wonder, what if they hadn't left that 6th floor? Would that, immediate identification of the Carcano, would that have changed the investigation,
It's a question that haunted Wilkins for years, especially considering that he wasn't officially interviewed about any of this until, decades later, when researcher Ian Griggs came across his name mentioned in a report. It's a story that, needed to be told.
Totally. And it really does make you realize how many pieces of the puzzle there are when you're trying to figure out what happened that day. But, Wilkins gave us the perspective from law enforcement. But what about everyday people who were just caught in the middle of this event?
Right.
That's where Mary Mormon's story comes in.
Okay.
Mormon, she was just, an everyday person in Dealey Plaza that day. And she brought her Polaroid camera with her to take some pictures of the president.
Yeah.
But the picture she actually ended up taking captured way more than just a motorcade.
Yeah.
It's become one of the most analyzed photos from that day.
Right. And, it sparked a lot of debate, especially when you consider the work of researcher James Fetzer.
Okay.
He's argued that based on the photo's line of sight, Mormon was actually standing in the street when she snapped the picture, not on the grassy knoll like you see in the Zapruder film.
Oh, wow.
Now remember, the Zapruder film is considered by many to be the most complete visual record of the assassination.
Right.
So, to have a discrepancy like this, that's significant.
So we have this film, and now we're finding out that it might not even show where this woman was standing.
Right.
This is getting pretty complicated.
It is. But here's the thing. Mormon's own words back up Fetzer's analysis.
Okay.
In a 1997 interview, she clearly states that she stepped into the street to get a better shot of the president. And she's repeated this detail, consistently in multiple interviews over the years.
So it's not just like some researcher's theory, it's coming from the person who was actually there.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
But the controversy doesn't end there. There's also been a ton of back and forth about the Moorman Polaroid itself.
Oh, no.
Researcher Jack White suggests that it might have been tampered with, pointing to inconsistencies in like the pergola area of the photo.
This is like a conspiracy theory inside a conspiracy theory.
Right.
It's hard to even follow this.
It gets a little crazy. But luckily, we also have the Nix film.
Okay.
This is another amateur recording taken from a different angle in Dealey Plaza, so it gives us another perspective on events.
Right.
And in a frame from the Nix film, you can see Moorman off the curb as the limousine goes by.
Okay, so if the Nix film is accurate,
Right.
that means the Zapruder film showing Moorman on the grass
Yeah,
would have to be altered.
that's right.
This is mind-blowing.
It is. And it raises the question, if Moorman's account is true and her photo is tampered with, what else might have been altered in the photographic and film record of the assassination?
I mean, if they changed one thing, why not change other things?
Precisely. And that's where, the work of John Costello comes in. He's done a lot of research on the Zapruder film, and he agrees with that analysis, placing Moorman on the grass.
Okay.
But his research also suggests that the Zapruder film itself is a fabrication.
Wait, hold on. So even if her picture matches up with the Zapruder film,
Right.
that doesn't necessarily mean that the Zapruder film is authentic.
Yeah, that's his argument. And it brings up a really crucial point made by researcher David Lifton.
Okay.
He says the real issue isn't just where Moorman was standing when she took the photo, but did she step into the street at all? That action, which Moorman describes so vividly, doesn't appear in the Zapruder film.
So we're talking about potential discrepancies in what is considered to be the most important piece of visual evidence from that day.
Absolutely.
This is getting really, really unsettling.
And it goes beyond Moorman, too. Think about her friend Jean Hill, who was with her in Dealey Plaza.
Right.
Both Mary and Jean have described Jean, waving, trying to get the president's attention. But in the Zapruder film, they appear static, almost as if they've been, pasted into the scene.
This is always something that just blows my mind. Like, they're almost ghosts in the film. You have to wonder, what else is, not right? What else is off?
And remember, we're talking about a time when the government had both the means and, some would argue, the motive to control the narrative around the assassination. Researcher Jack White explains how the government was actively collecting photos and films from Dealey Plaza for weeks after the event.
Oh, wow. So they were literally stationed at these places where you develop film.
Yeah.
Grabbing anything that they could find. That's crazy.
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
And Mary Moorman herself has said that the government borrowed her Polaroid numerous times. So it begs the question, were other photos and films, besides Moorman's, also altered?
But if they were going through all this trouble to control what we see, why not make sure every single detail, matched up perfectly?
It seems logical, but even the most, meticulous plans can have these oversights. For example, in the Moorman Polaroid, there are several windows visible behind Zapruder, but they're missing in the film.
So they might have focused on changing some things, but missed other details.
Yeah, it's like trying to perfectly recreate a crime scene, but forgetting to wipe away a fingerprint.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why first-hand accounts like Moorman's, given soon after the event and consistently maintained over time, are so crucial.
Right.
They provide a check against potentially, manipulated visual evidence.
It's like the saying goes, pictures don't lie, but liars can take pictures.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with something as complex and as controversial as the JFK assassination, where evidence is potentially compromised, those first-hand accounts become even more vital. It's about piecing together this puzzle where some of the pieces might be deliberately misleading.
Yeah. Yeah, it really shows how important researchers like James Fetzer are,
Right.
He's not just looking at what's in the photos and films, but also what's missing or what doesn't really match up with what the eyewitnesses are saying.
He's doing some impressive work.
Yeah.
For example, Fetzer points out that the Moorman photo clearly shows the white helmets of two motorcycle cops,
Okay.
referred to as A and B in his analysis. But in the Much More film, another amateur recording from that day,
Okay.
those same helmets appear to be in a totally different spot.
So once again, two pieces of visual evidence that don't line up.
Exactly.
It's enough to make your head spin
Yeah.
trying to figure out what actually happened.
For sure.
And then there's the case of Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent who jumped onto the back of the limo after the shots were fired.
Right.
He's visible at the rear fender of the limo in the Much More film.
Right.
But he doesn't show up at all in the More Man photo, even though she was close enough to get those motorcycle cops in the frame.
That's interesting.
It's like trying to solve one of those giant Where's Waldo puzzles, but with way higher stakes.
Yeah.
Like, every little detail, every frame, every account matters when you're trying to understand something as big as this.
That's where the real takeaway is here.
Yeah.
We have these two really compelling accounts.
Right.
One from a police officer.
Right.
One from a bystander.
Yeah.
And even though they're focused on different parts of the assassination, they both point to the same thing.
Yeah.
The absolute chaos and confusion of those moments right after the shots.
Yeah. And maybe even more importantly, they both make us really question the official story.
Absolutely.
Like, what if the truth about what happened in Dealey Plaza is a lot more fragmented, more complex, more contested than we've been told?
Absolutely.
That's what keeps these researchers going even after all this time, right?
It is. And what I think is fascinating is that even little details,
Yeah.
like the color of Mary Mormon's shoes,
Right.
become these points of contention.
Speaking of shoes,
Yeah.
Jack White, he also noticed something odd. In the Mormon photo, Mary and Jean Hill are wearing black shoes. But in the Zapruder film, they're wearing white shoes.
It's those little inconsistencies,
Yeah.
that start to chip away at the official narrative.
Yeah.
And it highlights why those eyewitness accounts are so important.
That's right.
They give us that human perspective,
Yeah.
that grounding in the actual experience of that day.
Yeah.
That can, challenge the sometimes really official, oversimplified version in the reports.
Imagine if Mary Mormon had never said anything about where she was standing, or if these researchers hadn't really looked closely at her photo and compared it to all the other evidence. This key piece of the puzzle would still be hidden.
It's a testament to how powerful individual voices can be.
Yeah.
Challenging those accepted stories.
Right.
Making us rethink what we thought we knew.
Yeah. History's not always, neat and tidy. It's messy.
It is.
It's contested.
Right.
And a lot of times it's shaped by the people in power.
Absolutely.
It's like peeling back layers of an onion, and every layer shows us something new, something we didn't expect.
Yeah.
That makes us question what we thought.
Yeah. And that's what makes deep dives like this so fascinating.
Totally.
It's not just about the JFK assassination itself. It's about thinking critically.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to these historical events.
Exactly. And in this case with JFK, there is so much information out there. Books, articles, documentaries,
Right.
even online forums.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to dig in and do a little exploring yourself.
The Dealey Plaza Echo, which we've been talking about today,
Right.
is a really great place to start.
Yeah.
It's full of those firsthand accounts and in-depth research
Right.
that'll get you thinking.
Yeah. And remember, as you go along, even the smallest details can be so important to understanding what happened.
Absolutely.
So what other aspects of the JFK assassination do you think need more investigation?
That's a question that'll keep researchers and historians busy for years to come.
I'm sure.
And who knows what other mysteries and revelations are still waiting to be uncovered.
Yeah. It's a never-ending search for the truth.
Absolutely.
And it's up to all of us to look at the evidence, ask the tough questions, and never stop trying to find those answers.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it's made you a little more curious and encouraged you to keep looking into this pivotal moment in American history.